Good afternoon, everyone. What I'm going to do here now is I'm going to do another life hack video about tying your shoes. And this specifically has to do with getting rid of shoelaces that are much too long. Most shoes, when you buy them in a store, the shoelaces are much too long, and if you don't tie your shoes properly and securely, then they'll constantly be coming loose. These shoelaces here on this shoe, I have cut down quite a bit. The actual shoelace was actually way out here. They were like, this is about 6 inches or so here that I've got left on this, but they actually went way on out here to like 15 or 20 inches. I cut off quite a lot of these shoelaces to get rid of the excess length on these things. A problem with the excess length on the shoelaces is that if your shoelaces come untied, they're flopping around and they're easy to step on with your other foot and cause you to trip. So it's important, and I've been doing this for several years. I used to be constantly plagued with my shoelaces becoming untied, but I've learned this trick over the last few years. A lot of children, their shoelaces will come untied, and you as a parent will spend a lot of time tying your shoelaces, or teachers or other people will spend a lot of time tying your shoelaces. Also elderly parents, and I've seen a lot of basketball games. Basketball players will stop and be constantly tying their shoelaces on the basketball court, even professional basketball. So what you need to do is when you get a pair of shoes, tennis shoes or boots or whatever, they typically have shoelaces that are much longer than you really need. You don't need that much. You just need enough so that you can tie them securely. I've cut off a lot of these, so you'll see actually if they drop down, they just hit the floor. I like to tie them off so that there's just enough so that they'll hit the floor, and there's not enough so that it will get over here in the way of the other shoe when you're walking and cause a trip hazard. What you can do once you cut them off is you can singe the end of the shoelace there with a cigarette lighter or a match to keep them from unraveling. You can also put a little knot in there to keep them from unraveling if you want. Now the way I tie them to keep them from coming untied is I do a double overhead knot like that, and then I do another double overhand knot like that and pull them down tight. Those particular knots are called surgeon's knots. It helps keep the shoe from becoming untied. If you use a single overhand knot, they come untied very easily, as I can show you. There's a single overhand knot, and you can just put your hand right down there and it just comes right out. But if you use a double overhand knot and pull it down there, you see if you put your finger down there, it'll still come loose, but not as easy. But if you do a double overhand knot and pull them down there good and tight, then if you put your finger down there, it will not come loose. You can actually lift the shoe with that. Now if you just use a single overhand knot, you'll find that will not be the case. And I can show you what I'm going to do is use a single overhand knot and pull it down there good and tight, and you'll see it'll come right out. So you use these double overhand knots. It's called a surgeon's knot, and you use two of them. you pull them down good and tight, and they will not come loose. You see, you can even lift your shoe with them. So that's it, a good way to tie your shoes to keep them from coming untied. Now, you can leave these loose if you want. They can, even though you use these double overhand knots and you pull them down good and tight, they can still work loose if you're doing jogging or a lot of running or whatever. Another way to ensure that they won't work loose is take both strings here and then do a single overhand knot here and pull that good and tight, and that will keep does two things. It keeps these overhand knots from working loose, and if they do work loose, they're not going to your shoelaces are not going to fall down on the floor. Also, if you do this overhand knot up here on both of these strings, it will keep the strings from falling down on the ground. So you could actually also, if you got a little XX string there, you could actually do another one. So if you tie your children's shoes like this, they'll stay tied all day, and you won't have to worry about their shoes constantly coming untied. Also, older parents or whoever, or anybody that actually has a problem keeping their shoes tied, you can use this trick. I've seen people walk around with shoelaces that were like 20 inches or 25 inches longer than they actually needed to be, and they would flop around all over the place and cause trip hazards and so forth. You definitely don't need to be doing that. And most shoelaces that you get on a pair of shoes are a pair of boots. They're much longer than they need to be. I don't know whoever came up with this idea that a pair of shoes had to have bows on them. I mean, to make them look pretty. I mean, who really looks down at your shoes anyway? Not very many people. And generally, like a man, your shoelaces are generally covered by your pants. The ladies, of course, their high heel shoes and a lot of their other shoes are just slip-on, and they really don't have laces. Now, of course, if they're out jogging or something, wearing tennis shoes, they'll run into the same problem, and they can use this to alleviate those shoelaces coming loose. But anyway, this is another life hack on tying your shoes to keep them from coming loose, and also to shorten those shoelace lengths so that you won't have a trip hazard. So once again, it's good for children, elderly parents, etc., etc. And don't worry about those bows. I mean, you don't need bows on your shoes. All you need to do is keep your shoes tied so they will stay on your feet and not get loose on you. It's important to keep your shoes tightly tied onto your feet, because if you don't, if kids are out running around, they can actually run right out of their shoes. Adult can do the same thing, or if you're like in mud or sand or whatever, especially mud, if your shoes are not tied good onto your feet, then the mud will grab a hold of them and you'll just walk right out of your shoes. So you need to keep your shoes tied well onto your feet. Another reason to keep your shoes tied securely onto your feet is it keeps the foot from working around in the shoe, and that's where blisters come from. Your foot rubbing against the side of the shoe or the toe of the shoe or the rear end of the shoe. That's what causes blisters, is friction of things rubbing together. So if you keep wear a pair of socks or a couple of pair of socks with your shoes and keep them securely tied onto your feet, then that will prevent blisters from happening. So anyway, that's just another life hack, and I hope you enjoy these life hacks and the gardening videos and the other videos I'm putting on YouTube here. And if you do like these, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will be putting more videos on in the future, and hopefully you'll like some of those and be able to learn some good things from them, and it'll help you out. So thanks a lot, and listen, you folks have a nice day, and we'll see you next video. Thanks.